Under the purple hush of a desert evening, the mesas blushed like embers, and the wind moved in slow currents across the dry grass, carrying with it the faint cry of a lone coyote. The land stretched wide and unbroken, a canvas of silence except for the shifting dust, and into that silence rode a woman whose hair gleamed white against the gathering dusk. Her name was Lozan, and though her body moved with the surety of one who had survived both battle and hunger, her heart carried a weight she no longer dared to voice. To those who glimpsed her silhouette, she looked like a figure carved from myth, strong, solitary, unyielding. Yet within, her voice whispered the same refrain she had muttered for years: "I am too old for love." She had been many things in her 45 years: warrior, healer, survivor of villages burned and names erased. Time had not been gentle, and neither had people. To the town that sat half a day's ride from her cabin, she was a woman apart, a ghost that walked in daylight. Some looked upon her with suspicion, others with thin-lipped pity, but no one looked long. When she stepped into the saloon for supplies or sat in the back pew of Sunday gathering, eyes slid off her as if presence itself was a trespass. Loneliness became her constant companion, as familiar as the knife at her belt. Yet even loneliness, when worn long enough, becomes a second skin. On nights when the music spilled from the saloon doors, she would pause in the street, unseen in the lamplight, and watch as couples twirled to the fiddle's sway. She watched hands clasp hands, smiles flicker like sparks, lives braided together in small, ordinary gestures. Her heart tightened, though she told herself such warmth was a thing meant for others, not her. With each year, her certainty hardened. Whatever story love once held for her had been folded shut long ago. But sometimes, when the air smelled of rain and the coyotes sang in pairs, she caught herself wondering if there was more. She always silenced the thought. Yet silence, as she was about to learn, can be broken when least expected. That evening, in the dim light of the saloon, William sat alone at a corner table, his broad shoulders slouched, hat tilted low. He was younger than most guessed, 32, but loss had carved lines where joy once lived. His wife had been buried 2 winters past, taken by fever that swept as fast as prairie fire, leaving him with only the hollow echo of promises never kept. Since then he carried grief like a hidden wound, covering it with work, with whiskey, with long hours on horseback under an endless sun. Yet beneath it all, there lingered a restlessness he could not name, as though he had been waiting without knowing for whom. He noticed her the way one notices the first star-piercing twilight, quietly, unexpectedly, unable to look away once seen. Lozan entered the saloon with the same wary grace she always wore, each step deliberate, as though she braced for laughter or a shove. Men turned to stare, some sneered, some looked away as if her presence disrupted the air itself. William's jaw tightened. He had heard the stories spoken of her. Wild tales of her skill in battle, whispers of curses, mutters that she walked with ghosts. But he did not see legend nor curse. He saw a woman, proud and weary, carrying a silence as heavy as his own. She stood by the bar, waiting for her supplies, when a chair scraped against the floorboards. William rose and crossed the room, not with swagger, not with pity, but with a quiet steadiness. He gestured to the empty seat at his table. "You don't have to stand alone," he said, voice low enough to be lost under the piano tune. Lozan froze. For years, no man in town had spoken to her without suspicion. Pride told her to refuse, but something in his tone, gentle, unhurried, caught her off guard. She studied his face, handsome still though grief shadowed it. His eyes carried no mockery, no hidden cruelty, only recognition, as though he knew something of solitude too. Slowly, carefully she sat. Conversation did not come easily. They spoke little, words falling like pebbles into a vast well. He asked about her horse, she asked about his cattle. Each answer was brief, yet underneath, something unspoken stirred. The town's gaze pressed on them like heat, whispers rising, but William did not flinch. Lozan kept her chin high, though her pulse quickened with the knowledge that she was being seen. Days passed. Weeks. And though she told herself it meant nothing, their paths began to cross more often. Sometimes by chance, sometimes not. When her mare came up lame, she found a sack of oats left at her door. When her woodpile dwindled, a fresh stack appeared. No note, no expectation, just small offerings that spoke louder than declarations ever could. She did not thank him, not at first. Gratitude was dangerous. It could open doors better kept closed. Yet when she caught his gaze across the market square one morning, a flicker of warmth passed through her before she could turn away. The town noticed. It always did. Murmurs swelled like flies around spoiled meat. That Indian woman, and him? Someone hissed at the saloon. Shame he can't find better, another muttered. Words meant to wound reached her ears, sinking like barbs beneath her skin. She told herself William would tire of her soon, that their fragile bond would crumble beneath judgment's weight. Better to end it now, she thought. Better to retreat before it could burn. One evening she told him so. They stood by the river, the sky stretched wide with stars. You don't know what it costs to stand beside me, she said, her voice rough. They will turn on you same as they did me. She expected him to argue, to insist. Instead, he only studied her with a quiet steadiness, then said, let them. I've lived long enough without speaking what matters. Her breath caught. She wanted to turn away, but his gaze held her, and for the first time in decades she felt something loosen within her chest. The river rushed on, relentless, but for a moment the world grew still. She thought of all she had lost, of the years spent believing love was a door forever closed. And then she thought of his hands, offering without demand, steady as the land itself. That night, as the stars shimmered above them, William leaned close, his voice barely more than a breath against her ear. I've waited my whole life for you, he whispered. The words, so simple, fell into her like rain on parched soil. Lozan trembled, half in fear, half in wonder. For all the years she had told herself she was too old, too worn, too late, here stood a man who saw her not as remnant or ruin, but as beginning. Still, fear clung sharp. Could she risk it after so many seasons of silence? Could she believe that love might come not in youth, but in the winter of her years? She did not answer then. Instead, she held his gaze, and though no words passed her lips, something within her shifted like earth after rain. The story did not end that night, nor the next. There were storms yet to weather, voices yet to scorn. But in that whisper by the river, a thread was tied between them, fragile yet unbreakable. And as Lozan returned to her cabin beneath the watchful moon, she carried with her a question she had long ago buried, one that would not let her sleep. What if the story of love had not ended after all? What if, after everything, it was only just beginning?